Hi, this is a short video to introduce you to SPSS and to the Transatlantic Slave Trade database that we'll be using throughout the semester. So to start with, I've just opened up a data set that has to do with cars. And so I just want to show you here kind of what some of the features are of SPSS and how to look at a file. All right, so we start here, and notice down here at the bottom, there's data view and variable view. Data view is where you can actually see the data, and variable view gives you information about the variables. So let's look at variable view first. So here we've got 10 variables of different types. This first column gives the names of the variables. SPSS is pretty specific, pretty picky about variable names. There's a lot of characters you can't have. You can't have a variable with a space in the middle of it, for example. So instead of putting a space, you might put like an underscore between words or something if you want to do that. We've got types here. There's different types you could have. The two most common ones that we'll see are numeric and string. Numeric means we're entering numbers, and string means we're entering words and other characters. Now, just because something says numeric here doesn't mean it's actually a quantitative variable. For instance, this variable for DOM means foreign or domestic. That's going to be a qualitative variable. It just so happens that it's coded as zeros and ones. We'll get to that in a minute. But so you can't go by the fact that it says numeric here. And there's lots of reasons we might want to code things that way. Width, you don't really need to worry about. Decimals, you can change those if you want to, but that's not important. Like I said with the variable names, SPSS is pretty picky about them. So sometimes we might want to put a label on here. So like here, something a little more descriptive for the variable, and this will show up then on any output you do. Values here. Values are going to be blank, or they're going to be listed as none, unless it's a qualitative variable that is coded numerically. So this one we've got 0 being domestic and 1 being foreign. And when you go enter your data, instead of typing in foreign or domestic, you type in zeros and ones. The rest of these you don't have to worry about right now. But let's look at the data. So we've got data here for foreign and domestic, the type of car it is, and you can see what those mean. The rest of these are self-explanatory, I think, and then the color. If you want to see the data as zeros and ones in that first column, you can go to View and then turn off the value labels and instead see those as zeros and ones. It's very important that you recognize, though, that this is qualitative data. This is nominal data. This is not numeric just because it says it's numbers. And SPSS will not stop you from treating this numerically. So you can do a lot of things that don't make sense because that's coded that way. But for some of the things we're going to do later on, it needs to be coded that way. So the important thing right now is not running output, but I do want to show you just the most basic output that we can generate. So let's look at how many, what the frequencies are for foreign and domestic cars in this data set. So if we go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequencies, we can pick this variable, foreign or domestic, hit the arrow to move it over, and click OK. There's lots of options we have over here, but we'll get to that another time. Click OK. And this tells us that there are 18 domestic cars in the data set, 12 foreign cars, for a total of 30 cars in the data set. This shows up here that there's no missing data in this data set. All right, so that's all there is to that for now. Now let's look at the transatlantic slave trade database. So we're going to ask you to explore this database and download some data. So to get started, let's go to Voyages database on that website and click on Search the Voyages database. Now you can see here there's a lot of data, 35,942 cases. That's far too many cases for us to work with, especially if you're using the student version of SPSS, meaning if you've downloaded it onto your own computer. You can only have, I think, 50 variables and 1,500 cases. So we'll have to make sure that all the assignments this semester are limited at least that far. So let's come up with, let's download all of the data where from the 1600s. So let's change this from 1600 to 1699. And we will look only at variables that come from the Spain or Portugal flag. Okay, so under Basic Variables, click on Flag and select Spain and Portugal. And we'll click Search. Okay, when we do that, that limits us to only those variables, only those observations that are in the 1600s under the Spain or Portugal flags. So now we're down to 998 cases. So that's much better. That's something we can work with. All right. So now we've limited our data set. Now let's think about what variables we want to have in our data set. To do that, we're going to click on Configure Columns of the Table. And on this drop-down menu here, there's lots of options here. Let's look for, let's see, we want the flag for sure. So we'll pick that and move it over. Let's look at also some of the characteristics. Let's look at the percentage of men and the percentage of women. Let's look at the mortality rate. And let's pick one more. Crew deaths during voyage. Okay, and you can move these variables up or down so that they're in any order. All right, so click on Apply Configuration, and this is going to show us all the variables we've asked for. Once you do that, click on Download All Results. It's going to come up with an Excel file. And you can see some of these variables don't have a lot in them. That's just part of it. And we'll kind of explore that as we go through. Let's enable editing. To import into SPSS, we are going to need to delete this first row. And then we'll just save that. Okay, so we'll save that as something local. I'll just put it on my desktop. All right, so now we have to import that into Excel, into SPSS. So we're going to go to File, Import Data from Excel. And I've got this data set on my desktop, so we'll click there. Oh, and it gave me an error because I have the data, the Excel file open. Okay, so we'll try again. Import data, Excel, pick the data set, and it's going to give you a preview. That all looks good. Click OK. And we have our data in here. So now let's just look at something at a very basic analysis here, just like what we did before. Analyze descriptive statistics, frequencies, and let's look at the nation. Click OK. And this tells us that in this data set that we downloaded, 880 of the voyages came from Portugal/Brazil, and 118 of them came from Spain/Uruguay. All right, so that's really all you need to know for now. Always let us know if you have any questions, and